Welcome everyone, Byron White here. Glad you could climb on board this fabulous webinar that I'm very excited about delivering with you. The topic, as you can read from the first screen, how to bring your brand to life with writing style. I'm really happy today to be joined by Mike Roberts, the president and founder. We really need to upgrade your title, Mike. I think you should give yourself a promotion to CEO or something.
CEO, you like CEO better than president?
I don't know. Something.
Help to executive.
Fool master.
I just would rather just go by founder.
Yeah. We're joined by Mike. Always a pleasure. We've done many webinars with Mike, and it's great to have you on board. And I'm here with Casey Joseph as well. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Sure. So, Casey, I've had the pleasure to work with both as a customer for WriterAccess and a consultant that we recognized his immense talent and have brought him on board to help us strategically with some of the work we're doing, including some of this style guide development and all kinds of neat stuff related to bridging the gap between what customers need, and he's a tough customer, I might add. Best way to describe you. Bridging that gap between customers and writers and how you achieve perfection and bridge that gap. So I'm really excited to have these guys on board. And so the format today is going to be interesting. I want both Casey and Mike to interrupt me or stop me as we go through this presentation to make it a little bit more lively and engaging, and heckle me if necessary, whatever. That'll open up a big can of worms with Mike, certainly. You know, just to sort of go through this deck, I think it's a really important deck. I think we're on to cutting-edge stuff here. You know, one quick sanity check you can do to show you how fresh and new this is. Do a search at Amazon for any books written on writing style or tone of voice or any of these topics we're going to be discussing, and it's amazing. You don't find anything. This, I think, is going to end up becoming something really, really special, really interesting. I'm working on a guide right now that's up to about 60 pages, 8.5 by 11, that I think I'm going to transform into a book. And this deck is a bit of a teaser for what you're going to find. But what we're also going to go over, just real quickly, so when I go through a deck, it's going to take about 20 minutes. We're going to open it up to questions. You can also use your questions tab to ask questions throughout the presentation that will be addressed and answered after the presentation. And then we're going to go to the panelists after I give the presentation, and I'm going to actually ask them some questions about where they're coming from. Mike just launched, for example, a whole content marketing initiative. I'm dying to pick his brain. Casey has great perspective, as mentioned, on these topic areas. So I'm going to actually ask them some questions, not only what do you think about this, but how are things from your perspective? So that's why I really wanted these guys on the phone today. I think that super great content and super great interaction hopefully will happen. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right in and bring you through sort of what we're going to cover today. So we're going to go through our first group of slides very quickly. What is content marketing? Then we're going to talk about developing your writing style, and then I'm going to have a secret surprise for everybody in the end, an actual writing style wizard that we've created in beta, which I'm going to give you the link for, that will allow you to actually hopefully find a very quick, fast, and easy way to create an actual writing style guide. It's free. It will always be free. It's a great tool and a resource, and I'll give you a link to it in the end. So let's see. Without further ado, let's crank through what is content marketing. You know, I've been running this is my 33rd content marketing webinar, and I really think it's critical that everyone that ever hears this, apologize if you're hearing this again, but you really need to understand the revolution that's happening. You know, content marketing is the art of listening to the wants and needs of your customers, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. I think that's, ironically, although it's a critical component of the definition of content marketing, it's actually the hardest thing to do. We can look at our search boxes, but we need to get much deeper. I think you're going to see some innovation happen in that space. How do we find out what our customers want? But of course, it's delivering great content to them. We all know how to do that probably, and some of the people on the phone are actually writers for WriterAccess, so you're in that business. The challenge is catching customers that are orbiting at high speeds, and that's extremely difficult. The whole content asset portfolio is radically increased, so that makes it even more difficult. You need to publish more and reach more people. and of course you need to give them information they want and need, and that's where the gap really gets bridged. You can't even discuss content marketing without talking about A/B testing and multivariate testing, and that's getting easier and easier to do now, but it's still pretty complicated. We're doing some neat tests on WriterAccess right now. You'll see the home page has changed since you've been updated. The page that's up now is a test that won, and it actually almost doubled our conversion rate, believe it or not. I'm not sure why, but there you have it.
What do you guys use, Byron? What was your tool
we
you
used?
used?
Yeah, we used Visual Website Optimizer.
Yeah, that's what we used to.
Yeah, and I don't know.
It's a great tool, right?
Exactly. Google made some ridiculous changes on GWO when they integrated in with analytics, and we just like abandoned ship on that. It was not working. We
abandoned ship from GWO too, like probably at the same time you did. But but Visual Website Optimizer, because remember how on GWO you had to implement, like somebody had to go and actually put JavaScript on every page where you're going to do a test?
Exactly.
I had no idea. VWO is so much more awesome. You never have to involve IT. Just a shameless plug, I guess, for them, but we both use it, I guess.
Exactly, and it's like pathway conversions as well, Mike. To your point, so it's like it's just much
and it's
more
got
visual,
heat mapping.
much more. Exactly. Okay, so finding that efficient path to engagement is also an area of vast improvement, and that's exactly what Mike and I were just talking about. What is the conversion path? What information do people need along that conversion path, and how can you motivate and accelerate people through the path? And if you think about all this stuff, it's just all content. All these pages, all of this work. There is certainly some visual part of it, but content really is becoming the centerpiece. It's funny. This slide I've been showing in speaking engagements for 3 years now. I look at this now, and everybody's probably looking at this like, wow, yeah, sure, of course, Byron, this is content marketing. When we were preaching this stuff 3 years ago, we were so far ahead of the curve. We were making this stuff up. It was, it used to be 5 sections to this, and then it became 6, particularly because we thought editing the 4th slide was such a critical component to content marketing. We actually wanted to make it its own silo. And I still do believe that creating content, particularly when you're creating with freelance writers, is great. But someone needs to polish it and proof it and bring this content together and give it the voice that you need and the consistency across the board. All right.
In regard to the silo of content marketing and the umbrella term, I know it's getting a lot more buzz, but marketing theoretically should always be customer-centric. So, what is being ushered in, with content marketing, this new era, that allows us to be more customer-focused? And how is it different than, what marketing should have been all along?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that first, ding over there that you're looking at, content planning, that's where we made our living, basically, at ideaLaunch when we were a full-service content marketing agency. People didn't understand the difficulty and the complexity. Mike, you'll remember, I used to go to you and say, Mike, now this took us 400 hours to produce. How can you shortcut that for us?
Right.
And, you were producing these reports that gave a lot of data, but they weren't giving the data that Casey's talking about, which is you still got to find out what these customers want.
Right.
You need to look at your analytics for this stuff. And I think that's the paradigm shift we're seeing here. It's
also the social feedback loop, right? It's kind
exactly.
I was just looking at SEO Moz, which is kind of, obviously the biggest SEO, I guess, community, but / tool, pretty big, right, in SEO. Their tagline has changed recently-ish. It's now SEO and social monitoring made simple. It's so, the whole thing is clearly converging. I mean, has been for a while, but it's just kind of telling when SEO Moz is now promoting their social monitoring tool on the top of their homepage.
It's funny because Rand was going to be a guest on a webinar with us and had to cancel because of some medical problems with his wife that they've actually made public, and prayer for his wife. and everything, but Rand and I got in a really interesting discussion about whether to even keep using the word SEO in our vocabulary.
Right.
Is that something that we still want to stand behind? And his answer was probably. I mean, you need to optimize, but maybe the definition of optimization is going to take a new turn, a new role. Because it's optimizing words and phrases and all kinds of things we're going to see in a second here. So, okay, cool, good feedback. Much more fun than me just rambling on for sure. All right, so what is writing style? And how do we wrap our heads around this? So let's take a look at it. Personally, I think you can think of writing style as personality expressed in writing. That seems pretty simple to me, but I think fairly on point to what writing style is all about. It gets more complex when you realize that you're drawing on a lot of different elements. Tone of voice we're going to talk a lot about today, punctuation, word choice, sentence length. These are all things that end up, being part of a thing you're analyzing and creating that express what you're trying to accomplish. And so we need to get our head around it, and certainly developing a writing style guide is critical to have a framework for all the writing assignments you're creating. And what I will argue, and hopefully convince all of you of, is that this writing style guide actually becomes the communication vehicle for your brand promise. And it needs to be something that not only your writers are in tune with, but your employees are in tune with how they answer the phone, you'll see, and literally every aspect of it. So, your writing style essentially needs to be aligned with your brand position, as I mentioned. It needs to be aimed at a particular target. That gets complex because different content assets you create are actually might have a different audience and need a different style. And you also need certainly a consistent tone of voice, so you at least have consistency throughout your messaging. You need to adhere to requirements and specifications and restrictions, and that's actually where I put SEO in one of 5 points. And you also have legal requirements and other restrictions that you may place upon your content or the type of assets you're able to produce. And of course, you need to deliver on performance goals, which is really where SEO and measurement comes into play. So that's what it's sort of all about. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Byron, can you go back to that slide? Because I'm really interested in this because we just did have, I just brought on three new marketing people, and they are all writing for us, and they're newish. I mean, they're actually 6 months old now, but when I've kind of struggled with exactly how to tell them how to write. And what we do, or what I've done, and I think I can identify what like step 1 and step 2 are. Step 1 for us is like, well, spy through the brand. We've always been a little bit irreverent. So what that means is that you can use somewhat curse words. Well, basically in all of my speeches, I always drop in some F-bombs or whatever, just because it sort of endears us to our audience. We allow ourselves to speak how we think, say, 25 to 40-year-olds or 20 to 40-year-olds speak, which is kind of identifying our target audience. Our target audience is pretty straightforward. It's like you, and it's everyone on the phone here, everyone listening. We all kind of are internet-y, so we'll refer kind of like to nerdy, like Harry Potter jokes and crap like that. We refer to like internet memes and talk like people know what World of Warcraft is and that type of thing. But in terms of the consistent tone of voice, I'm not quite sure where that goes. Like, what I try to tell people to do is just express their personality and just like write like they would speak. But of course, they each have their own little sense of humor. They each have their own sense of humor and their own personality. So how does that? And if I told them, try and write like you sound like me, that would not be good. Because some of them are,
We've set the barometer. the good news is this comment has set the barometer that we can examine as we go through this, because what I'm going to do is actually walk you through all 5 of these steps and
Perfect.
give you some thoughts on each one of these things. That's basically spot on what we're trying to do.
Cool.
And the real question is, how can that style that I'm talking about, bring your brand to life? And I'm not sure it's the F-bomb that's bringing your brand to life, but it's a loose style. It's a loose style. It's the founder of the company willing to say, express yourself, however that is.
Well, our customer service policy, for example, is spy food, not dicks.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that.
You know what I mean? Like, we could be, like, not evil or whatever, but, we're like, well, you kind of get it. It expresses the sentiment.
Well, I think, Mike, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, if the tone is basically the attitude you use when you're writing, then, and you're trying to reconcile the brand attitude with the audience attitude with, maybe even the attitude of a particular writer. There's a harmony that has to take place, and, having guidelines could be really helpful for that. I mean, I think communication is complex, and we tend to look at it as a megaphone, to where maybe we do our demographic and psychographic and behavioral research, and we speak to our audience based on those things we know, like the video games they play at a certain age. But at some point, that communication has to be received, and I think it's that communication feed, that constant loop that brings it into refinement and starts, in itself defining the attitude that you have collectively.
Gotcha.
I'm interested to see how Byron approaches this too. I know he's got some innovative thoughts on it. So, what do you have?
All good. All good. Everyone's read this, so let's move on. So let's talk about the brand position, because that I don't think a SpyFu or most companies have really thought through brand position. SpyFu does, is not brought in outside agencies or consultants. They shape the brand of SpyFu, right? This is more Mike generically saying, listen, let's sit down with these new writers and audiences, tell them who we are, what's our company background, how are we different from our competition, what are our goals, short-term and long-term, how do we define ourselves, what's our mantra, not dicks, right? So Mike's done a pretty good job of crafting a brand position. But, these are some common brand position phrases that come out, by big branding agencies. Celebrate something, expect great things, save babies. These are the topographical lines. But then you dig deeper, like on this slide, and it's like, our brand position is we bring prosperity. This is an insurance company out of the UK, by the way. We bring prosperity and peace of mind to customers, and recognize customers as individuals, listening to their needs and circumstances, right? So that's kind of heavy, but it's better than saying we sell insurance, the best, most reliable insurance in the world, right? They're trying to get under the skin of their target audience. And they're understanding that they're not just educating they're not creating a brand position for their marketing material, they're creating a brand position for their employees and how their employees treat their customers. That's the difference.
Like values that you're talking about in essence?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
So like our position or our mission might be, SpyFu's mission would be to help search marketers make money online, basically. Which is sort of like what we set out to do with our tools, but then the way that we treat them is really like, I just more like give people like the latitude to do what they think is right. And if they violate the don't be a dick rule, or if they feel like in any way they're ever doing that, then I don't know, that's...
I think you need to flush out your brand
I think I could use some help with this, I guess.
Yeah.
I do okay. We do okay on it. I think people are
aligned,
but...
Yeah. Well, okay, so you have an example now of a nice, tight, clean brand position. I would say back to the drawing board for you and to say, not what are your mission? What, I like the, help SEO professionals make more money. That's cool. But I think it's deeper than that. You want to probably connect and engage with customers that want to use technology to advance their business, right? Like that might be a sexier way to say, what you're doing, and then tying tying that back into how your employees are going to take that data, right, and run with it. So, what are you bringing to your customers? That's one way to do it. So anyway, this is just one slide, but the other challenge you have, right, is this incredibly diverse channel that you need to, exude your brand position into, right? Articles, blog posts, video. I mean, SpyFu actually does amazing video. Like your video, some of your favorite videos is we did that whole 60s, magic bus thing, which is like really, I could connect with that. I guess I'm 50 years old, so I'm a product of a slightly late product of the 60s, but that was a connection point, and I think that's what SpyFu has a reputation doing. You produce, hundreds of videos? They're usually somewhat entertaining. They're like almost teaser, movie teaser caliber. You've taken that, pounded that, and that's helped you exude your brand. But now you're starting to think, Mike, content, assets, information, you're extending the brand. So that's hard to do. So, and the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that a brand position needs to be executed not just in your marketing material, how you answer the phone. Look at these distinctions here. How can I help you today versus how may I direct your call? Can you imagine someone answering SpyFu's phone saying, how can I direct your call? Like, how cold is that?
In our space, funny enough, Byron, like having a phone number on your website is a brand differentiator. None of our competitors actually have that, so the fact that you can actually call us and talk to a human is actually...
But look at the frustration people have, right? Even large companies now are, please press the extension of the party you're trying to reach, parentheses, or we don't give a crap about you, right? So this is a cold threat versus picking up the phone or a real person. So, email correspondence, remember those famous to whom it may concern, right? I mean, email marketing certainly changed that by, all of the type size is one face, but the little teeny typeface is, like the person's name. It's like, it just like reeks of spam. Hi, blank, Jim, lowercase, Not that this is a form letter, but, you get the idea. But even the way tonally you're expressing, I will contact you is an active statement, versus let me know if you need additional support is more passive, right? So these, are you going to be an active company and really be aggressively wanting to help people, or are you going to be like, hey, let me know if I can help you, talk to you later, And so these are small sentiment, tiny little variations, but very critical for the execution of the brand. So now let's jump into target audience. So I think we all understand the importance of understanding your target audience, defining it and putting it in writing. But I think that's often a great place for you to start, or anybody to start, on who are these people. And I would argue that you wouldn't have, potential inner taglines like, SpyFu, not dicks, if your target audience wasn't a fairly entrepreneurial, guerrilla marketing, do-it-yourself sort of a customer.
I mean, it alienates a small set of people, but we live with that, I guess.
Right, a majority of your customers. Well, I think that your brand has come from your customers, right? It's like you know who they are. You hang out with them. You smuggle beer into trade shows.
Right?
You're right, exactly. You smuggle beer into trade show booths. Sorry I busted you for that, but I guess I was doing it too.
It's okay.
but
it's in the trade show's best interest. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, having a good time, right? So, in handing it out to your customers, though. So, and you did have some brilliant trick. I forget what it was, but you buy a limited supply or a keg, and everybody has free beers. You're like, wow, that keg really lasted a long time.
It lasted a long time.
Like 2 days. It must be warm by now. All right. So, my thought is that you need to not only think about your target audience, as customers. You need to think of them as readers, right? And you certainly need to crunch some data on them and find out what they're reading. Where are they coming from? What is their navigational path? You need to think of them as, let's find out what they're excited about and what your most popular pages are. So, just thinking of your customers as readers, or absorbers of content is a different way to look at it, and I think a really important one. So you're also going to see, it's critical to understand the level of proficiency this becomes critical when you're launching new products or new services. How educated people are they? Do you need different marketing people for different groups of people? Do they understand your products? Where are they? And that's important so you don't talk up or talk down in the content you're creating. Yeah, also, you have to under their mindset, right? Like Casey, for example, is a know-it-all. We know that when it comes to content. So I can't possibly.
I'm getting some great titles like the tough customer, know-it-all.
I know it's terrible, but it's out of pure respect. I promise everyone on the line and listen in. It is out of pure respect. But if all of our customers were like Casey, we would market differently. We would introduce products and additions differently, whereas we really deal with a lot of customers that are, smaller customers that are trying to learn what content marketing is and have very little idea of what's going on, or, so we've got a vast audience, and we need to gear our marketing and our mindset with the content we're creating around those variables. And particularly, you're going to try to get under the skin of the target audience, which is really how you engage them. So personas, we all know about that. These are a couple samples that I'll have in the deck for everybody to look at. We don't need to read them now. But you really do need to put in black and white and on paper exactly what you're trying to imagine about your customers. I also think an image is a critical part of putting together personas, and you're going to see a surprise on that later. So writing style. So certainly there are elements of writing style, and there are a lot of elements. I mentioned a few of them in the beginning. And there are roots in writing style which are actually quite intense. Language, psychology, culture, metrics, all of these things are beginning to blend and need to be, inside the head of a writer creating content. So a lot of stuff going on here, and it gets very difficult to put this
I got
together.
a question for you. We were writing some content today. We were redoing our homepage, and I couldn't think of a better word. Even though I knew it was totally wrong, I used the word opine, and I'm like, there's no way I'm putting the word opine anywhere in any sentence that I ever write, but I'm going to leave it here right now because I just want to keep moving through this sentence, and then I'll go fix it later. How do I tell somebody that they should never use that type of word?
I've got a slide for you on that, and
Yeah,
I've got
okay,
a solution for you on that. And it's in quick summary, a really cool thing to do with guiding writers and creating a writing style guide is to, I'll just give you a teaser on it, more of this, less of that, right?
Gotcha.
So
more dick, less opine.
Find the boundaries, right? Define the boundaries. That's what you're trying to do as you put this together. So, here's a couple.
I think it also stems back to what you're saying about the target audience and the brand position as well. I mean, if you're a university and you have an educated audience like you were showing in that slider, and everybody's familiar with the word opine, and it actually, this is maybe just my passion or preference as a writer. If it truly encapsulates what you want to say better than any other word, and it's understood by your audience, it's exactly what you should be using. The problem is words like that, I agree with you. I mean, you could use it in speech at a dinner gathering and recognize that, maybe a lot of your message is lost.
Yeah,
so
I feel like I'm Fraser Crane if I do that, Let me opine. There's no way I'm going to. Like, it's not the actual perfection of the word as a choice for, accuracy, but I would just prefer to use like 4-letter, 5-letter words, even if I have to use like 3 of them to get across the point of a 6-letter word that's got the texture or something of opine. I think I also use like pour over also, which in the same sentence, and I was like, God, man, this is the worst.
I mean, personally, I think opine is a great word for spy-foo. I mean, it's all about, hold and state one's opinion. I mean, that's what it defines, and it's perfect for you. I think it's a great word for you. I'd actually use it. But I like you making statements of, the tone of voice, for all our copy should be X, Y, and Z. Mike would have 3 very different things here than what you see, but here's some examples at least that you can follow. Clear and easy to follow. keep things brief and to the point, use crisp language and true to the point. These are common things you'd hear. But what about this? Engaging and surprising. Write with a warm language as if you were talking to a friend. Bring a smile with clever use of ideas, analogies, aphorisms, quotations. I mean, this is opening up and inspiring a writer to do something different and unique. These are key elements here that you need to get up front and summarize in a concise form like this. Imagine tens of thousands of orders at WriterAccess going through a month now, and it's hard to write instructions for these orders, but and being brief is difficult. Writers don't want to be taxed with looking through, a 10-page style guide that explains everything under the sun, and and is typically center focused on your products and your services and all kinds of other stuff. You got to get to the point. You got to summarize what you want, and this is a good barometer to check it out. So writing styles is interesting. I'm working on this monster document I mentioned earlier that we're up to 18 styles now that we're flushing out, complete with descriptions of how the styles vary. Casey's seen a teaser on this and is welcome to comment on it. It's ridiculously ambitious, and it goes way beyond the typical 6 or 8 styles that you're learning in grad school now if you're a journalism major. We're trying to get into really clever and different elements, like Wired, for example, came to me just because of my love and interest for the Wired magazine product descriptions. Casey and other people are worried I'm going to get sued for using that, but Wired magazine has an editorial standard, and the standard is engage the reader, entertain them, and also convey a great review about the product. So those are just a couple of teasers of what you'll get. We're about 80% there now. What's interesting is we're putting samples together for each of these, and that's what's complex because we need to get permission and from both customers and places like Wired Magazine to use an example in something I'm putting together. But grouping.
What I really appreciate what you're doing. What I appreciate about what you're doing, Byron, with both the writing style guide and this presentation on tone, is that there are discussions regarding these things, and they typically are academic, and it's not that makes it any clearer. But I think that these feed in to so much of our communication, and although we may not know with certainty what that exact style should be or that exact tone should be or exactly what our audience is thinking, I do think we're better for considering these things. And I do a lot of work in educational consulting, and we evaluate state and federal grants. And when you're talking about learning, there are a lot of variables, and you can't control for all of those. So sometimes the best thing you could do is say, okay, let's be aware of what's out there. You do this a lot, Mike, also with with your surveys and your SEO research. But let's be aware of what's out there, so that we know what we can talk about. Let's mark the uncertainties of what we don't know, and let's try to pull away something or take away something practically that we could use that improves upon what we're doing. It may not be perfection, but it takes us a step closer to our goals. And I think with the writing style and with these considerations that we're bringing up now, just the discussion itself brings us a little deeper into the topic, and hopefully will make us better communicators, with our customers. So I think this is outstanding.
I'm just thinking about all the really interesting things that could be done with, just because I've never seen a breakdown like that, but I can immediately identify what those be, and it's pretty. Yeah, my mind is running now about like crazy sort of programs that I could write.
Well, a couple of things. I think that the technically inclined like Mike, especially stacks of them, not as good as Mike, of course, over at Google, are looking at language very, very closely, right? Because before you know it, Google will not rely at all upon backlink popularity as a ranking device to determine which content is better, whose website is better, who deserves a better listing position for a keyword phrase. They're going to need to look at the quality of the content, who wrote it, who the author was, what what their social sphere looks like, how many followers do they have. I mean, these are all things that are beginning to come into play. But I do think language is quite interesting, and I do think these fundamental styles need to be fleshed out. We're taking a wild stab at it. Look at this next slide. These are just blog writing styles, right? Blog style was one style, but there are sub-styles within some of these styles. And yeah, exactly. You haven't seen that yet, Casey. But, like let's take, like piggyback, right? So that's, writing about a topic that is currently popular on sites like Technocracy or, Trail Rank, or, it's taking a topic that's already popular and writing about it, right? So, wing flap is one of my favorites. That's sharing dislike or hatred for a person, product, service, or brand, right? Every company gets that, and those are important posts to look at and to take a look at, and people like writing them because they get attention. They stir up commotion. Challenger, we're all looking at that. I mean, those are some of the most interesting elements of sharing a response to a topic, or challenging other bloggers to answer on their own blog, and sort of starting this whole circle of people communicating and challenging one another on their blogs and following the themes. So events, we know that, sharing impressions and opinions on an event that's happening at a particular time. So this is cool stuff, but this slide alone should open everyone's doors to the possibility of just like, what should I write for my blog this month? These are techniques, these are styles. This is tactical stuff that I think you could take with you today. So there's another, Mike.
Almost like an ingredient list. Like when you look at it, I mean, each of them could be used independently, or they might be used together to create something entirely different. Insight and piggyback, for example. So it gives you an idea of what do I have available to create what I need?
Yeah. What resources do I have?
That's
How do I
deep.
direct?
I mean, where did you come up with these? Did you just did you just think about it really hard? Because I can imagine each of these things, but it seems like a lot of work to have just come up with this sort of taxonomy.
It's
Is this your internal research?
It's everything that all of our writers do. I mean, this is just looking at orders and looking at, researching topics and talking with smart people like Casey and other people I work with, and Mia. And I mean, this is just what you have to do if you're in the business of writing. I mean, it's
cool.
Like, Mike, how do you come up with that idea for the new killer report that you're generating in beta right now? I mean, it's like, this is what we do for a living, right? So,
yeah.
But here's
so it's all in-house, basically. You guys came up with this stuff.
Yeah.
What would be interesting, Mike, kind of to your question, is after, Byron, you've completed this work, to be able to, take somebody who's not been part of it, give them these different blog styles or writing styles, and give them, a large sample set of all the, let's say, different blogs that, the 50 to 100 blogs, and see how easy it is for somebody to actually use that guideline to categorize those blogs, or if they find themselves, struggling. Because I think, you have the insight of 20 years of doing this, and all the writers that work for you and so forth. But then, is it transferable, and does it make sense of the world that that we live in? That would be just a curiosity, my academic curiosity, of course. And I'm sure Mike
just broke my whiskey glass. I don't know if you guys could hear
that.
I
was going to say, what broke? That was the first actual breaking of a glass or whatever it was that we've had on the webinar.
I was
really
going
cool.
back for another sip of some Johnny Walker and dropped my whiskey little thing. That was exciting.
So spy food. Don't be a dick and drink whiskey.
Dude, we're like madmen over here. Like
all right. Well, here's what I call the writing style barometer. Right? It's probably not a good name for it. Maybe you guys have a better name. But again, you're trying to gauge. This is what we were talking about earlier, Mike. So I want my content to be straightforward style. Okay, so I want it, less like as quickly as possible and more like pronto. So, it's sort of showing somebody, cut to the chase, inspiring, apply decoration, jazz it up, man, proper organization. Are your ducks lined up? I just love this I think you're going to see something in a second here with what we're trying to do. All right, so
gotcha.
Next is tone of voice, which is probably the most fun part. And when people think of style and style guides and tell me what style do you want me to write? There are a lot of elements to writing style, but the most fun element is tone of voice, and it's also without question the most difficult to master. And the reason it's so difficult, I think now more than ever, is there are so many different types of styles. I just showed you 18 of them, and then another 22 blog styles. You have all these different styles out there. It's impossible to master all of these styles. No one could ever do it. It's literally impossible. And that's both good news and bad news. The challenge is writers, and particularly freelance writers at WriterAccess, are being asked to write and be very modular. I call it style flexing or tone of voice flexing. You've got to get good at flexing, and our best writers are absolutely writers that can flex and adapt to the different needs. The problem is articulating those needs, which is hopefully what we're going to get to. So, so that's sort of tone and voice, quick summary there. I like
in regard to tone of voice,
yeah.
I have one question of clarification. So earlier you showed a lot of different elements that play into style, and also described it as kind of personality expressed in writing, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know tone is an instrumental part in that, but how do you see tone as being just, since it's one of those parts of writing style, how do you see it differing from writing style as a whole? Is it just that it's a part and not the whole?
Yes.
So what's the distinction between the two, between writing style and tone?
I think I've got a good slide on that. But if I were to verbally describe it, I would say tone of voice is one element of writing style. Punctuation, jargon, syntax. There are many different elements of writing style. Writing style is the big picture element of all of these things. Tone of voice is only one element.
So would tone be irreverent versus sort of formal,
active,
and then you
had
had you had those styles that are be basically short and to the point, or be a storyteller? Because I could talk about in a relatively flowery way how we're not dicks during customer service events, but I could also be short and to the point, spice who not dicks, about as short and to the point as you can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yes. So that my first question answered maybe Casey's question. My first answer was maybe Casey, which was how does tone of voice fit with style? And and I might be wrong in this, Casey. I mean, you're the academic. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see writing style overall is the big picture element, and tone of voice is only one element within writing style. So that's how
I definitely agree with that. And not that I'm the expert in this particular area, but I think that what I've seen is that tone is usually referred to as kind of your attitude towards the subject and the audience, where writing style is the manner in which you communicate. So I agree with you that that attitude feeds into the manner in which you communicate, or the style. I think both of them, in what you have expressed here, it could be true. Personality expressed in writing could be part of your attitude towards the subject, and it could be part of your writing style. So that's
fair enough. We'll all agree that writing style is in general complex, right? And it's drawing on different elements like tone of voice, diction, use of punctuation, word choice, sentence and paragraph length, right? Abstract versus concrete imagery. There's a whole bunch of different elements to writing style. Tone of voice is only one of them, right?
So,
but
so Kiyoshi, are you kind of talking about the relationship aspect? I'm thinking for us it would be, we are sort of your peer educators. We're we're tutoring you, but we're not your professor. We're able to just speak to you at your same language. We're part of your peer group, but we understand math really well, or whatever.
So maybe in that sense, the tone would be, it's how you feel about your peers. So there might be a common respect. How you feel about the subject matter is one of which you feel you have mastery of, or control.
I see.
But the manner in which you express that respect or that control can take place through all these different literary devices. You know, you can use figurative speech, or, you know, the words that you choose, whether you use opine or, you know, think through something. You know, that becomes the way your tone is manifested in your writing style.
Okay. Can I have one more question?
Sure.
You've heard about how, like, there's like kind of like two ways to write like sales copy. Not necessarily two ways, but if I divide it into two ways, one is to assume that your potential customer knows both sides of the argument, is basically educated on what they're trying to buy, and so you tell them, well, here's the benefit, here's the drawback. You know, like, here's both sides of this thing. The other is to say, let me just tell you all about everything that's good, and I'm not going to tell you anything about anything that's bad. Is that part of tone or style then?
Style, definitely. I mean, that's actually part of the I mean, that's whoa, I don't even know where I would put that, but that's a particular content asset, and developing a style for that asset, and it's related more to the you know, what's the purpose of the content, the goal of it, you know, and what content should therefore drive that goal. That's more of a content-related issue, not even a style issue. I mean, the style ends up being it's a
different type of document then.
It's different material, different content that is really the driver, not so much the style. Imagine the style comes in when you know what you're going to say and it's all bullet pointed out, so you know the direction you're going down. Now you have to put it into a style, right?
Yeah.
So to make it, you know, so in tone of voices, this slide right here helps to explain the different elements of tone of voice. You know, is it authoritative or informative? You know, academic or friendly? You know, so again, you're taking those 8 bullet points, and by the way, the content is different for those 2 sales letters. There's 8 different bullet points for each of those sales letters. Maybe 4 of them overlap, but you're making different points. So you know, and that's,
I see.
We could get into a whole discussion about that as well, okay, so.
I guess my confusion there was that my relationship with the person I felt like would be different, since I'm kind of assuming, or I'm just kind of treating them like they are, like, I'm assuming that they're either smarter or more educated or less educated on the buying.
I think that is where it translates to a tone. Is, you know, in making a decision on how to best communicate, you know, with your audience and what content to choose, that's the how of it. And, you know, it may not, you know, it may overlap with writing style, but it's possibly not directly related to the, you know, to what Byron presented right now, except in the way that you described. I mean, if that decision is coming from an attitude, and that is that, you know, my customers are uninformed or unwilling, or, you know, and it could be cast in a way that's not negative, but, you know, or coming from a place where they know everything about this, you know, then that is a disposition or an attitude you have about your customers, and I do think that that's an integral part of tone.
So it's
and obviously, looking at the slide, personas are where you're seeing me now. I mean, those 2 sales letters would have been written from 2 different personas you put together, and you're trying to test to see which of the individuals that you're targeting is going to get a better response, and you're creating different content for the 2 different personas, you know. So I think you're beginning to see how this is coming together. Let's go to another one here, and that's this: how personal, you know, is your tone of voice, right? So I love this example. We all probably know American Idol. You know, these are 3 very, very different people, right? And with 3 very different personalities. So the question is, which personality is best associated with your company and your brand? You know, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Which one of these is best associated with my brand? Oh, I've never watched American Idol.
Oh,
so I have to. I only know of Simon Cowell, and I only know of Paula Abdul from like her 80s or early 90s music.
My wizard.
I guess Randy Jackson, maybe, probably. I'd go with that. I'd go with Randy Jackson.
All right.
Just based on the description, but I don't honestly know him.
Well, the important thing is you have to make a choice, right? It doesn't matter who these people are, and it's very hard to do, but it forces you down a pipeline to say, wow, these are very different opinions. Gosh, I don't know which one I should be. That's a bad sign. You know, if you don't have a sense for what your company's tone of voice should be, you need to find it quickly. So the requirements we talked a little bit about. We don't need to go into it in too much detail. And the performance element as well, I actually want to look at any questions that people may have had in just a second. I'm going to go through this performance, but I encourage everybody to ask some questions for all of us, and we'll dive in and answer them. But, you know, I think the good news is there is a way to measure performance of content. You know, Mike's been in tune with Word Vision, and Mike has his own entire platform on measuring success of you know, and guiding you on achieving success in the search engines. But, you know, looking at the impact of content you published in terms of improved listing positions, looking at how much additional traffic has come to your site for keywords you're focusing on, looking at time on site and on particular pages is easy to measure. Looking at return visitation can be a key indicator for whether your content marketing investments are paying off. Looking at the content asset downloads and actually correlating those content asset downloads to your actual sales, even in Salesforce or some other mechanism you may use to track that. You know, and looking, of course, at conversion rates. And people often overlook. People tend to hyper-focus, you know, with A/B testing and multivariate testing, as Mike and I were talking about earlier, and probably you too, Casey, with some of your customers and even at your own site. But really, I think content surrounding those conversion pages can have a huge influence. So you need to keep your eye on the ball and how much content you're publishing, where you're publishing it, where people are coming from, to really get a feel for what's happening. So I'm super psyched to introduce this content style wizard, which I'm going to give everybody the link for in about 1 second. But, you know, a writing style guide, I just have a couple quick slides on it, and then I'm going to try to show you the actual wizard or give you the URL, and everybody can go there and play with it. Matter of fact, Mike can go there right now. I'll fast forward to this link, Mike. Go to, and Casey as well. Go to writeraccess.com/style-guide-wizard. And you can start to take the little wizard test and see if it floats your boat or what you think of it, and there's a feedback button on step 6. But what we've tried to do is, first of all, just make it easy for anyone, any company, any person to create a style guide. Difficult to do, believe me. And really I just want to explain to you quickly, you know, the importance of a style guide, and that's to really get everybody, writers, your creative team members, and even employees on the same page. So, you know, a writing style guide can take a number of different forms. You know, it can be a simple 2- or 3-page or even a 1-page document. It can be an addendum to a branding guide that you're putting together. It can be a white paper where you know, bullet point some things that become the essence of what you want to write about, or it could even make its way into a task list. So there isn't an official style guide, writing style guide, that I feel needs to exist. But it certainly should involve your marketing team, your writers, and your employees, and your customer service specialists, and of course content strategy if you have it. And the other important thing is everyone should use it, especially employees. And what isn't a writer guide? That's the right choice of English, and that's certainly should be talked about. You know, it's not always necessary for simple content projects. You know, it's not a long summary of how great your company is or your products or your services. Trust me, that does not help writers. It probably hurts their ability to write well for you. It doesn't guide them for the style and the tone, you know, that they need direction on. And it's certainly, you know, it's not an all-in-one document that applies to all of your creative projects. So some rules for style guides, you know, every angle is different. You need to think about that. You know, I think it needs to be inspirational, and you need to write it to try to inspire writers and not just tell them how great you are. And you need to, you know, of course, you know, don't hype things up too much. Find a deeper way to communicate what you need to in that brief. And so these are just a few elements. You can read them yourself. So here's the writing style wizard. So everyone can take a look at that and poke at it and play it. There's a great element of feedback on the last screen. Like I said, it actually prints out a PDF document. So have some fun with it and see what your thoughts are. Welcome your feedback and opinion. But for now, let's go to any questions anyone has and any feedback from our panelists on the overall presentation.
Great presentation. I'm just going through the wizard, and I was trying to fill out my own brand stuff, and I appreciate the fact that you have in the industry drop-down list. I'm always like, oh God, am I like computer services or internet? Like there's always like these really generic ones, and you happen to have search marketing. I'm like, yes. So that was a direct hit. I am trying to figure out. I'm trying to think about how we just got done, or not just done. We're in the process of. We just published like 10 articles on helping people sell SEO. It's kind of like our reports. The SEO Recon reports are basically designed to help consultants and SEO agencies sell their services. And so we wrote a bunch of content around how to sell SEO. And quite honestly, like we're profitable writing that content. And just to give you an idea of the way that we actually measure it, I just try to break even on the content from the perspective of I look at Google Analytics, and I basically say, well, of the content that we just produced, how much money have we made in terms of goals, right? Because everyone has a goal funnel, and so we just created an advanced segment, and that advanced segment happens to be our selling SEO articles, and then we look at our conversion, the conversion area of our Google Analytics, and see how much money we've made and how much we make per visitor. And in about 2 weeks, we've made about $2,000 out of 10 articles. So it's, I mean, you can imagine amortizing that over a year, it'd be pretty profitable. So I would definitely like to be able to scale that sort of thing. And I'm curious whether or not you think that, like, I could use your platform to actually generate content that's, that's focused in that way. I mean, it's kind of like you have to have at least a reasonable amount of industry knowledge, if not industry empathy, in order to tell SEO consultants or agencies to talk to them in any pretty intelligent way about how to sell their own services. And of course, we sort of soft sell recon files in those things. So my sort of concern has been well, I can generate this content, and it costs us maybe $500 an article. But how do I do that and super hyperscale it? Because I've got 100 ideas of content that we could write, but I only have 5 writers on staff. Mm-hmm. How do I scale that?
So, first of all, you could certainly use the WriterAccess platform to do that, but the way to do that, we've tried to solve this problem. You've reached the pain point that really all customers have. How do I know that I'm going to get what I want, right? And interestingly enough, the answer is not just oh, well, we have 5,000 writers, and we've got tons of writers, and they're all great, right? The answer is much more complex. It's, number one, how can you screen writers and find the writers you like? We've created something called Casting Call that allows you to do that, where you can put in a 3 to 5 sentence description of what you just described and what you're looking for. You can then have writers free of charge apply to you saying, please choose me, here's why. you can then test them out on an article and all as well. But here's where it fails. I'll be honest. It fails typically because the customer can't articulate what exactly they want until they see what they don't want.
I see.
So it becomes a guessing game for writers to guess what's inside your head, right? And so, we've tried to solve that by creating this style wizard, for example. We've also tried to solve that with something super innovative called voice communication, where you can get on and ramble on a message without even talking to the writer and attach that recording to the call. So you may articulate somehow better with your voice, better than you could with a written word, exactly what you're looking for.
Interesting.
And, so it's hard to summarize that, but you would probably get a lot of that. Like you, Mike, alone would be a very good guinea pig for that, because the way you talk and approach ideas and talk about your company, someone would probably immediately get a flavor for what you're looking for.
Gotcha.
So, but it's hard to
do.
I
mean, actually, that's how I do it in-house. I actually use Camtasia, and then I post little. I'll actually sit there and ramble about like an article for like 20 minutes, just with my face, and then I post it to screen. I'll do like 5 articles at a time, and then I send people like a screencast of it, and so that's interesting that's how you guys. That could so.
It hasn't caught on. Customers have been slow to adopt that as a method to enter orders. I'm not sure why, but I think it's because of the way we set it up. We set it up charging the customer like 25 cents a minute and kind of a lousy job of explaining to them how they could benefit them. But what we've decided to do, and we weren't paying the writer to listen to the recording, so it was like additional work, and writers weren't supporting it. So we've declared kind of failure on that, and we're going to spin it around backwards and basically change the whole model to say, okay, it's $1 per minute to talk with a writer, or it's like 50 cents a minute to leave a recording for the writer. And then the writer makes 70% of that money. So just like they do in our normal model right now. So now a writer can, make money, rightfully so, for spending the time on the phone with a customer or listening to the voicemail. So by spinning it around, I think the second take on this will be better. But back to the writing style guide, because I know we have people that do want to talk about writing style, and of course we're all interested in helping you and talking about this. But Casey, you're playing with a wizard. I'm dying to hear what your take is on it. And so what's your thought on the wizard?
Well, I've actually been listening intently to the conversation you're just having. But knowing what we've talked about, I appreciate, for one, that you're recognizing that practically people are not going to go through a 5 or 6 page wizard to complete what they need to do, and that you're getting at the heart of just like everything. I'm not going to speak a little bit academically for a second. When we go into just any kind of relationship, or we go online and looking for businesses, there's so much information that we have to process at any given moment that it's overwhelming. And we know now that we have access to a greater amount of information than we ever have. So we do have a tendency to try to simplify our lives by creating filters. And even though those filters aren't always perfect, they can be helpful. So I think you've chosen important filters here. Starting with, of course, industry, which is fairly standard, but going into the brand positioning is another key, because some people might think of brands as just a distinguishing mark, but in reality, it's what does your company mean to you and to your audience. And that's where you're getting into that first deeper aspect of communication when you talk about meaning. And when you go forward on this, I always like, Byron, that you You give us something like simple and tangible to grab onto, like the market position. Are you an elephant, a lion, or a gazelle? You know, that kind of mnemonics, I think, will stick with me for a while. I also appreciate that you have these proficiency levels. And as I said earlier, it's not that we're trying to create a comprehensive list of the considerations, but you're just like you're doing with your analytics. You're picking key performance indicators. So industry knowledge, for example, product service knowledge, education level, I think are all important. You know, there might be something that speaks to interest. You know, what do you assume their level of interest is in this, or what is their ability, not just their knowledge, but you know, what can they do in regard to this? And then the audience mindset. You know, we talked about that a little bit as well. So, you know, all these things to me are kind of presets. They're filters that give people an immediate way to understand a large amount of data in a quick amount of time. And I think it's probably right about the right size, in my opinion, for what people will do. You know, I know that third page was where I was starting to say, okay, you know, I'm getting deeper into this. So it may be helpful to have, like we talked about, to have these as categories that could expand and collapse. You know, so if people feel like they're in a position to speak to personality and tone of voice, they could expand that and fill that section out. But on, you know, in their own merit or their own right, I think they're all important categories that could give a very comprehensive view of what you're trying to do to a writer so that they could communicate in the voice that you desire.
The challenge becomes getting customers to fill this out, and that, you know, I think that writers would greatly benefit from this data, and that's why we feel strongly that we need to give it a try and give it a go. We had an internal debate, for example, on the section step 5 on whether we should include SEO instructions. You know, in this document, is providing keywords in this document relevant? And I'm kind of hoping that people respond positively to that because, you know, there's so much anti-keyword stuffing discussion going on right now, and it seems pretty clear that we had an interesting question from somebody, and it was related to, could you talk a little bit about post-Penguin and clients wanting longer content? You know, could you talk about how that affects style? It's a really good question from Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. And, you know, I would tend to argue that Google's, you know, with both Penguin and Panda, Google's making a statement that content matters. You know, links don't matter as much. Content matters more. I think that there's been a lot of discussion about longer versus shorter as well. Personally, I think that Google's looking for quality, not length. I would
fully agree with you on that. I mean, I think even Google says in its web blog, Google's fundamentally trying, you know, if we take everything at face value, they're trying to provide relevant, high-quality content to people's searches. That's how they thrive. You know, if they're unable to do that, their tool's ineffective, all their advertising dollars are down the drain. Right? So, you know, I think what Google's been saying for quite some time is speak to your audience. You know, give them something that they value, and we're doing our best to create algorithms that reward that. Now, you know, there's a world out there where just like you could be a high-quality person with some amazing ideas, and you can show up to an interview, you know, dressed in flip-flops and unshowered, you know, people aren't going to listen to you, possibly, unless you find a very sympathetic soul. So I think this is where the world of SEO and SEM come in. It's, you know, specifically SEO. It's like, okay, there's still a need for putting our best foot forward so that high-quality, relevant content, you know, is presented in the best possible way. Mm-hmm. But I think when you get into the details of, and you know, this is, it's a little audacious for me to be speaking of this, you know, because this is, you know, far your expertise more than mine. But you know, it seems to me that when you get into these discussions about, you know, should it be a 250 to 300 word article or should it be a 500 word article, again, you're starting to write for the algorithm, you know, rather than than your audience. And if your audience is seeing a 200-word article of value, they're sharing it widely through social media. It's being posted on various websites, and it's driving a great deal of traffic to you. That's going to do far more for you in your rankings than the specific criteria of whether you chose 250 words or 500 words.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Mike?
I mean, I think that the question is, how much spam do you get in your email inbox, like in 2012 versus, 5 years ago? It's hardly even a problem or a consideration anymore, and Google's going in the same direction. It doesn't matter how much you try to cram stuff in. If it's not high-quality content, it's not going to get through. So, I agree. Oh, hey,
bunch of other questions on this. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
I would appreciate it in a if some of these if some of the selections between authoritative and like informative had an example, just like a little question mark guy there, because as I'm going through it, I'm like, well, I think we're informative, but we're also an authority. So if you can give me those things in the wizard, that's my one bit of feedback on that.
Examples in there. Thanks.
Yeah, examples are awesome.
We need to wrap up because we're about 10 minutes over time. I think we might need to. I think we might get cut off in a little bit as well. But the net of it is, people wanted to know if this presentation will be available. It will. We had some wonderful comments on some grammatical problems, which I can promise you will be cleaned up when I can get this deck over to other people here to clean up for me. Thanks for those comments, though, and spot on. Being the leader of a community of great writers, I should have the time to finish the deck sooner so I can get it copy edited by my team members. So welcome that comment. Thank you for that. But hopefully writers, there's a lot of writers on board for this particular webinar, which is great, and I hope we've left you with a thorough understanding that we're committed to educating and acclimating both clients and writers with new methodology to create better content. And it is difficult. I think writers do need tactical training and advice. Someone has some great comments on that as well. Can we get more from you? Can we get taught how to do things? How do we take our career to the next level? I think those are all really important things that everyone needs, and we'll work hard to deliver some of those variables. But don't underestimate the power of this presentation as you think back on it. There's a lot of really important stuff here that I think we went over. Remember that my role is more the bridge between customers and writers and trying to find better ways for them to communicate. So, without further ado, I just want to thank everybody for being on the line. Feel free to reach out to me and anybody else. Casey, how can people get a hold of you, and who do you want to get a hold of you? And Mike, you can answer that question as well.
Sure. They could reach me. I can provide a number through WriterAccess, or they can call at 505-264-6771 since this is recorded, or reach me at Casey at caseyjosephmarketing.com. I'm primarily focused on helping businesses harmonize their need for profitability with their audience need for desirable, interesting content. And so if they have any concerns in that regard, I would love to talk to them.
That's great. Mike, how can you be reached?
Yeah, reach out to me at mike@spyfoo.com or on Twitter at @spyfoo. I actually don't check at Mr. Spy as often as I should, so try at @spyfoo. But yeah, I'm around.
And a 1-minute
or you can call our phone number, hit us up on live chat or YouTube, whatever.
And you provide, Byron, both of our websites, so I think we have our contact information there too.
Yes, exactly. So I just actually went back to that page so everyone can see the proper spelling and whatnot. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. And until next month, I hope your content world's a little smarter, better, faster, and wiser. And thanks, Mike and Casey, for being on the call today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Byron. Always a pleasure.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.
See you next month. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.